What are we discussing on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast? How the D-backs blew another series with their loss to the LA Dodgers.
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. You're listening to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas, multimedia journalist and graphic designer. So please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there, you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. On today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, we're discussing the D-backs blowing another series, this one to the LA Dodgers. How much blame does the offense get for the D-backs struggles this year? And after this upcoming series against the St. Louis Cardinals, is it time to trade for their closer, Ryan Helsley? Discussing all that on today's Locked on D-backs podcast. But first, I want to say thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms. So please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube. Please subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. We try to go live on YouTube Sunday through Thursday after D-backs games, when I'm available, of course. Want this to be an interactive show. Drop comments down in the YouTube section as the show is live. I'll read them on air. Follow me on social media at CreatorThomas24 or look up Locked on Diamondbacks, both Twitter and Instagram, so you get notified when I go live, or hit that little bell notification icon next to the subscribe button so you also get notified when I go live. But now let's jump into the Locked on D-backs podcast. All right, let's talk about another D-backs frustrating series loss, this one to the LA Dodgers. And we know the Dodgers are a good team, but the D-backs have had the Dodgers number for a while now. I was listening to Burns and Gambo, and I think they said the D-backs are like 19. I think entering game 2 against the Dodgers, the D-backs were like 19-18 against LA in their last 37 games of the season. And this is a matchup that the D-backs have not feared for a few seasons now. Knocked them out in the 2023 postseason. Like, you look at D-backs versus Dodgers series the last couple years, and they've been really close head-to-head games. And this series and the last series against the Dodgers so far in 2025, both were winnable series for the D-backs. You ended up with a series split where one of those games you definitely should have won when you had a massive offensive performance. And then you look at this series against the LA Dodgers. Game 2, you are trailing the whole game, but you have a Moreno 9th inning home run to tie it up. You get the Corbin Carroll home run to give you the 2-run lead in extra innings. Bullpen blows it. And then tonight, you get a gem of a quality start from Corbin Burns. The offense, situational hitting does not show up. Now the D-backs lose back-to-back games against the LA Dodgers in a series where you look and say, this was the perfect time to strike against LA. Injuries to their rotation, injuries to their bullpen. This Dodgers team was begging to lose this series after struggling against the LA Angels. But when you go against this D-backs team who seems to be so inconsistent, play to the level of competition, you just can't trust them to get the easy wins. And at this point of the year, with the D-backs, let's pull up the D-backs record, because their record is still fine. They're 26-24. Like, that's the thing about the D-backs. They never go on losing streaks. They never go on winning streaks. They just kind of stay 500 all season long. They're currently 5 games back of the division lead. They're 2.5 games back of the wild card. They do just enough to tease you, which is how I feel like this season is going to go all 2025. I feel like the D-backs are just going to be a tease that just kind of stays around in the wild card mix. Just like last year, we get to the final couple weeks, D-backs are going to be within a couple games, and then sadly lose out on the postseason, because that's what happened in 2024. And now I'm at the point where I think it's time to bring back the chaos meter and decide how worried we are about the D-backs missing out on the postseason, because This is something that we did in the first half of last year when the D-backs got off to that slow start in the first half of 2024. We kind of had the chaos meter going until the All-Star break, because after July, we know this D-backs team completely took off post All-Star break, and so we were able to retire the chaos meter. But now I think it's time to bring it back, because my worry level on this D-backs team for the rest of the season and making it to the playoffs, I think it's like a 7, probably 8 right now. 8's probably more realistic considering how bad we've seen the D-backs be, how bad we've seen the D-backs play against really good competition this season, how bad the bullpen has been for weeks now. We didn't get situational hitting today. Like, this D-backs team from top to bottom just isn't playing great baseball, and that's why I think we're pretty high on my little chaos meter. That's why I think it's at least a 7 or 8, because I have not liked the way the D-backs have played baseball the last few weeks. You look at this finale today, a great start from Corbin Burnes, 7 innings. It sucked they gave up that 3-run shot to Teoscar Hernandez because he was cruising through this game. Burnes looked so comfortable against the Dodgers. Like, I'm fine making him the highest paid player in franchise history just for his success against the LA Dodgers, but it's wasted because the offense did not show up. Once again, Eugenio Suarez, back-to-back nights, he was bad in situational hitting. But at the same time, like we'll discuss in segment number 2, when diving deeper into the numbers for the D-backs, with situational hitting, with clutch hitting, Suarez secretly is like the one guy you can't get upset at. He's the one player with over 1,000 OPS or runners in scoring position. He's been the best player statistically in those situations. And so even though he didn't come through the last couple games, the numbers tell you he's by far the best D-back with runners in scoring position. Just overall, this D-back series was a microcosm of everything we've seen wrong with the D-backs the last few weeks. The situational hitting or lack thereof. The bullpen wasn't bad today, but we've seen it be bad in this series and overall this season. And just some guys are starting to go in little slumps after their hot starts. I'm looking at you, Pavin Smith, who for a few weeks now had just been struggling. The vibe surrounding this D-backs team is just so low, and it feels like these players are just not held accountable. Torey Lovullo needs to do a better job of making these guys feel pressure, because when you lose games like to the Colorado Rockies, your bullpen blows it, and then you go into the press conference saying, man, those guys on the Rockies, they got some guys that can bang. Like, that's the wrong message to send to your team. When you keep losing all these winnable games, I don't want to hear you just write it off and say, it's baseball, it happens, we'll come back and get them tomorrow. The lack of urgency is one of the most frustrating things from this D-backs team. The players look like they're going through the motions. The manager feels like he's just saving guys for the end of the season, and I don't love his decision-making early in the year. Just overall, this D-backs team is not playing good baseball right now. It's gross what we're seeing from Arizona because the talent on this team is so high. On paper, this is one of the most talented teams in the National League. This is one of the best offenses in baseball. You can count on at least 3 great starts a week from your rotation, and Corbin Burnes, Fott, and Kelly. If we have Ryan Nelson in the rotation now, you're basically getting 3 to 4 quality starts a week from your rotation. And if Zach Gallen turns it around, that's still one of the best rotations in baseball. But the vibe, the morale from this team seems so bad right now. The accountability is terrible. I think things need to start getting uncomfortable. As I keep saying, things need to start getting hot around that D-backs front office. I'm not calling for the job of anyone, but I want some people to feel the pressure. If things don't turn around, we might need to have some tough conversations and make some tough decisions potentially. So we'll see if the D-backs ever do that. Of course, Mike Hazen and Torey Lovullo are boys. I just want Hazen to instill a little fear in Torey Lovullo. Hold him accountable. This team needs to be better because Torey doesn't hold his players accountable, and maybe it's because leadership doesn't hold Torey accountable. Now we'll discuss how much is to blame on the D-backs offense for their struggles this year in segment number 2. But first, I want to talk to you guys about Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. No more late night door dashes to the crib. Monarch Money is not only saving me money, but also calories, because the gains are coming in for the summer with no more random door dashes to my crib. So if you want to take control of your life and your finances, do it with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. All right, back here on the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, and now let's discuss how much is to blame the Dbacks offense for their struggles this year, because like in a game tonight and in game 2 against the Dodgers, we saw some terrible situational hitting from the Dbacks. First and third, nobody out, 8th inning game 2. Dbacks get no runners across the plate. Kind of the same situation tonight. Eugenio comes up to the plate. Dbacks get nothing out of it. Little things like that is why the D-backs don't win enough games. Not coming through in the little moments like that is a huge reason why D-backs lose games like this. But in the grand scheme of things, how much can you really blame the offense? Ooh, I just dropped a coin. Sorry if you guys heard that. Because we know the bullpen, when you're doing the little blame pie chart, bullpen gets probably the biggest slice right there with Torey Lovullo. But how much would you actually put on the offense? Do you think the offense has been a huge reason why the D-backs have been inconsistent this year? Or do you think it's like just a little sliver of the pie, 5% you just put on the offense? Or do you say, you know what, a quarter, a third of the pie goes on the inconsistencies of the offense this year? Because the situational hitting, not the best the last 2 days. And for the D-backs, when you look at their numbers with runners in scoring position this year, they have not been that good in 2025. And it's weird because you look at the numbers last year for the D-backs, the offense was incredible. Runners in scoring position, they led the National League in both average and OPS. No one was coming through more in those situations than this D-backs team. And top to bottom, it felt like every player on that squad came through 300 average, 800 OPS, runners in scoring position. Felt like everyone was contributing to the D-backs offense last year. But you look at the numbers with runners in scoring position in 2024, and the same can't be said, because this season, the D-backs are currently entering today's game 12th in average and 10th in OPS with runners in scoring position. It has gone way down compared to last year. And the weirdest thing about it is when you look at some of the players' numbers in scoring position, this D-backs team individually, guy to guy, has not been good at all in 2025. Like I said, Suarez has over 1,000 OPS with runners in scoring position. Geraldo Perdomo over a 300 average and almost a 900 OPS. But everyone else, every other player on this D-backs team, either below an 800 OPS or below a 276 batting average, except for Naylor. Naylor has a 296 average with scoring position, with runners in scoring position, but only a 693 OPS. 685 OPS. And that was entering today again. So Carroll, sub 800 OPS, Moreno, sub 700, Naylor, sub 700, Marte's a guy, average below 100, OPS below 400, like up and down this D-backs team. No one is contributing or runners in scoring position. And so when you look at a game like tonight, a game like yesterday, first and third, nobody out. Maybe it's not that surprising that the D-backs didn't come through, because their numbers with runners in scoring position aren't that good. And so would you say this D-backs team is not a good situational hitting team because of their numbers with runners in scoring position? I don't know if I would go that far, because as bad as the numbers I just said are as a team and individually, when you actually look at more advanced stats in terms of situational hitting, this D-backs team is actually one of the best in the National League because, again, scoring position, they have not been good. But in other areas, this team has been amazing. The D-backs are second in productive outs in the National League. What does that mean? Basically, if it's second and third, 1 out or less, or excuse me, second and third, second and third, 1 out or less, how often do those runners advance? D-backs, second most productive outs in the National League. How often, what's the percentage of runners on scoring? The D-backs, third highest percentage in the National League. Okay? That's super efficient. When the D-backs runners get on, there's a high probability of those guys coming home. Percentage of runners scoring from third with less than 2 outs. This is a situation like we saw the last 2 days. D-backs, again, third highest percentage in that situation. And so even though they didn't come through the last couple nights, D-backs have come through more than you realize in those situations. How about men on? We said runners in scoring position, this D-backs team is not good. How about just men are on the bases if there's a man on first base? D-backs, third highest OPS in the National League. That's what I'm talking about. There are just so many weird numbers that actually tell you this is a good situational hitting team. It's just quite literally when they're on second base and like it's the third inning, that's like the time the D-backs aren't good. But any other situation, they're fantastic. Late in close games, that means it's seventh inning or later and it's a 1-run game. D-backs, second highest OPS in the National League. How about if it's just a 1-run game overall? D-backs, highest OPS in the National League. So if it's a close game, if it's a late game, D-backs offense comes through. Second highest OPS in the National League in high leverage moments. This is a clutch team. This is a good situational team, right? Because let's not forget, how many comebacks have we seen by the D-backs this year? It probably feels less than you remember because so many of those comebacks were spoiled by the D-backs bullpen. But there's been so many 4, 5, 6 run comebacks by this D-backs team. Don't forget that 10-run inning we had against the Chicago Cubs where we still lost. This is a team that's clutch. Late game situations like we saw in game 2 against the Dodgers, even when it feels like there's no hope at all, this D-backs team in a hurry can change the game with the one swing of the bat. And so as much blame as we want to put on this D-backs offense for times, for situations like we saw in game 3 and game 2 against the LA Dodgers, in the grand scheme of things, you cannot really put any blame at all for what the D-backs offense has done the last couple years. Last year, it was the best offense in the National League by far, essentially, right? Runners in scoring position, like I just said. Overall, runs scored, average, OPS, like this D-backs team was the best at all of them. And you look at the offense once again in 2025, maybe not as good as they were last year, but still third in the NL with runs scored per game. You look at OPS in the National League, D-backs are second. And so this is still overall a super dynamic offense. So I can't really blame them too much. Marte's still good. Naylor, Carroll, Perdomo, Pavin. I mean, he's been slumping recently overall in the season. You still are positive with what Pavin has done. Tawa, Thomas haven't been bad. Like Suarez has been a power machine. Gurriel, Moreno are finally on heaters the last few weeks. Like the lineup, the offense is good. Yes, there are games like tonight where you don't show up when Corbin Burns has a great start. But in the grand scheme of things, this offense has been fantastic for like 3 straight seasons now. And so if you want to blame the D-backs offense for their struggles and inconsistencies in 2025, you can just miss me with that because I put very little blame on the D-backs offense for their struggles and inconsistencies the last couple of years. Now we'll discuss why the D-backs should trade for the St. Louis Cardinals' Ryan Helsley after their next series. We'll discuss that in segment number 3. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. My favorite Wonderful Pistachios I actually have right here. Sorry to the audio listeners only. You're going to have to go to YouTube for this one because right next to me, I got 3 of my favorite flavors here. And this is what is great about Wonderful Pistachios. Unsalted right here, no shell. Chili roasted, no shell. And then this one is roasted and salted with the shell. The great thing about Wonderful Pistachios is the variety. You could get salted, unsalted, with shell, no shell. Get a little kick to it if you wanted to. No matter what flavor you want, they have a variety and a profile that fits just for you. So please go get yourself some Wonderful Pistachios. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Back here on the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, let's read a comment. This comment is from Toots Pogs Forever. They said Dbacks played tough this series and lost. Must-see TV as always. Yes, they were must-see TV, but what I want to see is a victory because these are must-win series for the Dbacks. This game tonight, this finale, borderline a must-win victory for the Dbacks for the rest of the season, and they lost. There's been so many really important games against these NL East teams, against these NL West teams, and the Dbacks consistently did not show up in those series, and it's just so frustrating to see. Now up next, we go against the St. Louis Cardinals, who I feel like are the bizarro Arizona Diamondbacks. We'll talk about more of that in a second, but I think the biggest thing entering this series is we are going to get some scouting on the Cardinals closer, Ryan Hesley, because the D-backs desperately need a closer because for whatever reason, we don't trust J-Mart in that role. I'm praying when he comes back, he is named the closer, but regardless, the D-backs should still go out there and make a move for a guy like Ryan Hesley because he is such a good pitcher. You look at his numbers this year, 2.8 ERA. The strikeout rate has gone down. The whip rate has gone up. There are some concerning stats for Ryan Hesley, but considering he is a pending free agent, I'm hoping we don't have to break the bank if we want to trade for him. I know there are some people out there that are like, Jordan Lawler for Hesley straight up. I'm not trading one of the best prospects in baseball who could be a major league shortstop for 10 plus years for a closer who we might not re-sign this offseason. Now, if we could trade him for, I would do a Tim Tawa or another interesting young guy who is not one of our main prospects for Ryan Hesley because the D-backs need that guy. The walk rate is insane for him this year, but he's still a strikeout machine, and he's still been fantastic the last few years. And the D-backs don't have anyone on the level with J-Mart out who is as good as Ryan Hesley in those high leverage closing situations because that is really the most important thing. Again, I like a lot of these D-backs relievers. I like Ginkel. I like Beeks. I like Miller. I like Murillo. I like Graveman. Like I just named like 4 or 5 guys. Like I like all those pitchers for the D-backs. The issue is I don't like them as closers. For whatever reason, when those guys try to close, they are terrible for Arizona. Kevin Ginkel is probably the biggest culprit because you look at his career numbers in save situations, a 5.03 ERA. In non-save situations, a 3.05 ERA. That's all you need to say to sum up Kevin Ginkel and the rest of these guys. They are great in non-save situations, but whenever you tell them to put on the cape, they can't do it. J-Mart is a guy that can do it, but for some reason we don't want him to put on the cape. That's why the D-backs need to go out there and get themselves a bona fide closer in Ryan Hesley. Don't trade Jordan Lawler for him. Don't break the bank for him, but the D-backs do need a guy of that talent who is good, who can shut down an inning, who can get some strikeouts. It will be frustrating if the D-backs brought him in because knowing Arizona and some of the concerning trends already with Ryan Hesley, you already know if the D-backs trade for him, it would be a lot of 2-3 walk innings, and then all of a sudden it might get a little dicey, but I would still take the gamble on Hesley because the bullpen is just in shambles. J-Mart's returning soon, but if you had Hesley as your closer, J-Mar's your setup 8th inning guy, and then a mix of high leverage relievers between Ginkel, Beeks, and Miller, with still Murillo and Kendall Graven mixed in. Like, again, I like the bullpen with those names of how it sounds. Got to get the Ryan Thompsons out of here. But if you were to trade for Ryan Hesley, I think the ceiling of this bullpen would just go so much higher. Again, the D-backs need defined roles in the pen, and once they do that, I think the bullpen would be so much better. And then as a team, the reason I called the Cardinals the Bizarro D-backs is because this D-backs team, one of the most talented in the National League, but just does not play like it. The Cardinals, I feel like, are the reverse. I look at their talent on paper, and I'm not blown away, but you look at their record, better than the D-backs. You look at their stats, offensively, they're right there. Pitching, they've been better. And it's so surprising because you go up and down their lineup. Their best player this season is probably Brendan Donovan, who I've always been like, he's a solid, like, good player. Overall, you look at the numbers, like, they're good. They're not great. He's not an all-star, but he is a quality major leaguer. But this season, he's probably been their best player. The rest of their lineup hasn't really done anything like that exciting. Like, no one has more than 7 home runs in their lineup. They have one speedster in their lineup. They don't really have anyone with a high average outside of Brendan Donovan. Some guys on their bench are putting up really good numbers, but again, just small sample sizes. So there's no one in the lineup that is screaming superstar when looking at the Cardinals lineup. Then you look at their pitching, and they are getting some really good performances from the Eric Feddes, the Matthew Liberators, right? The Miles Mikolas. But how much do you actually trust from those guys? I don't trust Fedde in his 5.3 strikeouts per 9, his 3.9 walks per 9. Like, when your strikeout rate is almost the same as your walk rate, I probably don't think you're going to be that sustainable that long term. Same with Miles Mikolas. K rate kind of close to his walk rate. The bullpen of the Cardinals also a little bit up and down outside of Ryan Hesley. This Cardinals team likes to walk dudes, and so that's probably going to be the area where the D-backs need to really take advantage. But overall, the Cardinals are a team that plays better than the sum of their parts, and I think the D-backs can take some lessons away in this series. Watch how the Cardinals play as a team, how everyone is working together, stringing sequencing of hits together, pitchers having shutdown innings after the offense comes up and does some damage, relievers coming in, shutting down innings when the starters leave some runners on the base. Like, this is a series where the D-backs need to take some notes from the Cardinals of how to play more as a team and how to get the most of the talent on your roster, because the Cardinals are not as talented as the D-backs, but as a team, they are playing more together. And so this is a series where the D-backs can do some scouting of Ryan Hesley and hopefully take some lessons from the St. Louis Cardinals. Now, that's it for this edition of the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Deuces.